So let's talk Zhaire Smith, the Philadelphia 76ers' eventual selection in the draft after they drafted Mikal Bridges and then traded him to Phoenix. So Zhaire seems like a guy who can be one of the best defenders in the league. Gained comparisons of Andre Robertson, Danny Green, that like. His thing is he's only 6'4", and he's around 200 pounds right now, which could still allow you to be pretty quality. I mean, I would imagine that he can defend point guards and two guards pretty effectively. The question is he going to get strong enough to where he can defend small forwards consistently and then sometimes even power forwards? Now, I would give him the chance to do it because we've seen guards who have been able to survive at power forward. Eric Gordon, James Harden, Kyle Lowry, because these guys are just good post defenders, right? So they can't really get like bodied up against guys who may be bigger or stronger than them, but the gap isn't too drastic, right? So we could see that with Zhaire Smith. But again, he is going to have to get a bit stronger to do that. Do I think he'll ever be in a position to not get like bullied by LeBron? I mean, probably not, but that's okay. So, but, you know, at the same time, that means he's probably never going to be like Kawhi Leonard, but a level below that is still really good and something that teams would love to have, right? And I do think that's going to be the calling card with Zhaire, is that defense, and if he can fit into Philadelphia's thing, then that's just a lot of switchy defenders between Covington, himself, Saric, Simmons. I don't know about Embiid switching like that, but he's still a great rim protector. So that is really good, and I could picture him with developing an offensive game, making the impact of like Robertson or Marcus Smart, where, sure, the offense isn't totally there, but it's there enough to combine with the defense to where you can be a pretty positive player. Now, as far as how he's going to make that leap on offense, I think you start with the shooting. His percentage from three in college was good. It was actually 45%. Now, he didn't shoot that many. He only took 40 in his last year of college. But his free throws, lingering around 72%, are intriguing. But even so, I've heard that scouts, they don't love his form. It has a weird release to it. I'll be honest, based on some of the Summer League stuff I've seen, his jumper hasn't looked that weird to me, but I'm going to trust that NBA scouts, they must see something, whether it's like his elbow alignment or if his body is, if everything is going in the order it's supposed to go in. I mean, I'm just watching live television. They're breaking down his form like inch by inch, so I'm going to assume there's something there. So he's going to have to correct that, and if he can, and he can be a decent outside shooter, then that's awesome. Then you can be one of the best role players in the league. You might even be approaching like Danny Green levels of impact at that point. But the interesting thing with Zhaire is there's a chance he could end up being better than Danny Green, depending on where that jumper is because of his athleticism. Danny Green may be a pretty decent transition player on offense. Defense, he's elite, but we're talking offense here. He's okay. He's not really a fast break guy like that, whereas Zhaire can fly up and down the floor, and he can also be a hell of an alley-oop target. And I think even this season we could see times where he is running plays with Ben Simmons or Markelle Fultz, where he's cutting to the rim and he's getting lobs. And given that Embiid is a pretty good, well, he's good enough from outside to where you have to care about him at least somewhat, that could space the floor out. Saric, in his shooting up front, will cause at least one big guy to not be around the basket, so there could be enough spacing to where Zhaire could get himself some cuts, some lobs, and all that. I would like to see him attack the offensive boards. I believe he was a pretty good rebounder in college, to where like his effort levels and stuff was there, so if he can be like Robertson, and if the defense is sometimes going to not care about him at all from outside, then just hit the offensive boards, you know? Robertson averages like 2 offensive rebounds a game, so that would be good for Zhaire to get that. And then also, if we can get to his ball handling, he's been able to do some stuff in the open floor in Summer League where I mean, sure, he doesn't seem like a point guard who you're just going to give the ball to all the time, but if the ball ends up in his hands, I trust him enough to make the right play, whether it's just a simple pass or maybe he's able to even beat his guy off the dribble. Because I've seen a couple of times where he'll hit someone with a pump fake and then he'll just get by him on a right-handed drive and then he can use his verticality to finish at the rim. So, I mean, you combine all that. Like, if he's a guy who can just do enough as a ball handler in the open floor, in the half court, if he can be at least an average NBA three-point shooter, we'll say 35% on, 3.5 attempts a game or so, potentially even a little better, but that might be hopeful thinking. And then his cutting, offensive rebounding, and if he ends up being the defender that we think he can be, that's a hell of a player, you know? Now, sure, is he probably averaging 11 points and 5 rebounds? Yeah, so I'm not acting like he'll be an all-star or anything, but that's still a very effective player. He can be in that Robert Covington, Andre Iguodala mold of just super valuable. Although I don't know if he can get to Iguodala because, I mean, Iguodala was like putting up 5 assists a game for a decent stretch of his career. But yeah, now is there a chance that Zhaire could even get to like 15 or 16 points? At that point, I think either his ball handling or his shooting would have to go to a level that right now seems like it'd be pretty difficult to do, but not impossible. He is 19 years old, so he's got all the time in the world to improve here. I mean, if we fast forward 3 seasons, a 22-year-old Zhaire Smith could be really good. And then it helps him that with the personnel on this team, plays are going to be made for him, right? Ben Simmons is going to get him some open looks. Joel Embiid in the low post. Markelle Fultz, if he's himself, then he can go off the dribble and the defense will collapse onto him. Zhaire could be open. And the defensive lineup that you could go with for a team that was already great defensively is really something where you could try... well, I don't totally know if Fultz starts or comes off the bench. I mean, Simmons was most successful as the point guard for them, but you could still try lineups of like Simmons, Smith, Covington, Saric, and Embiid. I mean, that sounds like a pretty straightforward lineup. And it's only one replacement. You just go from Redick to Zhaire. That could be something. So that's the ideal thing. And I think because Zhaire is such a good defender, even if his offensive game never figures itself out at all, his fallback option is at least Tony Allen, who, regular seasons at least, helped the Grizzlies win, and then in the playoffs you could leave him open, and his overall impact was a little diminished, but still a valuable enough player, right? This is a Chucky Beat production. So I do like the pick. I think Mikal Bridges may end up being better than Zhaire day one, especially because he's probably going to get more minutes on Phoenix than Zhaire will with Philly. Because Bridges is farther along as a three-point shooter right now, but I think if you give Zhaire some time, get his offensive game a little more polished, have him figure out how to deal with the fact that NBA teams are going to leave him open from 3, then we could see him end up being a better offensive player than Mikal is. And then defensively, I think he's already better than Mikal. So, yeah, I like the gamble for Philly. To be honest, I mean, I like the gamble for them, but I also think it'd be totally fine if they just felt that Bridges would be better than Zhaire, because, I mean, being able to shoot's a real thing, and if Zhaire doesn't figure that out, then Mikal could end up being the better player. So I don't know what's going to happen, but Zhaire Smith is definitely intriguing. But one thing I actually do have to say, if I can keep up with my slight negativity of Zhaire, I guess, Philly is quietly a little teeny bit devoid of spacing. Like, they have a decent amount of shooting between Covington and Saric and Redick, but then you get to like Ben Simmons, Fultz, where, I mean, we don't know where he is. For all we know, he'll start making threes like nothing ever happened next season, but who knows. Embiid is still not really that great from outside. You've got TJ McConnell, who doesn't shoot threes, and then if Zhaire also isn't going to be able to hit outside shots, that could actually be like kind of a problem for this team. I don't totally know what the resolution for that would be, because it's just a matter of seeing what works and what doesn't, what lineups are going to work and which ones won't, so there will be some mixing and matching. But there are like kind of quietly a decent amount of non-shooters on this team now who play on the perimeter, so that's something the Sixers are going to have to manage a little bit, but the talent is still definitely there with this team, so I like the pick. I like the buying into him. We'll see what happens.